Braciole.
Okay.
We get the giggles. Oh my God. What is happening? We are falling apart. So in this series, we're examining the attachment themes strewn throughout the FX Hulu show, The Bear. We will be discussing in detail each episode as the story unfolds, so that you can watch or rewatch before you listen and then follow along with our discussion. We have seen all the episodes, but we won't discuss any content beyond the episodes we're discussing. So if you haven't seen the show, press pause now, go watch, and hop back on to the podcast.
So, welcome back. We are doing the last episode of season 1 of The Bear.
Yeah, I'm glad to finally get to this sort of finish line.
Well, and it's been a ride, especially with just the arc of the show.
Oh, sure.
With the last episode being so chaotic and so painful. We're back.
Yeah, I was thinking it's been a ride doing this with you.
The ride of my moods? Is that what you're saying?
And this last episode has been a little painful and chaotic. Not really, but...
And this is the first time we've shot in the morning, so it's different.
It is. Yeah. We are sort of the first humans we've spoken to. You are.
Yeah.
I did briefly talk to my family, but...
Just briefly.
But it was very brief.
Hi-bye.
Yeah, it was a lot of that.
Well, so with that, morning drinks, beverage we're making, and we really have to get a way to find a way to integrate this better. But until then, this is what it is. But honestly, it's you and I enjoy cocktails and making them and trying new recipes. And so this one is a Chicago Fizz.
Apropos for a show.
Yes.
In Chicago.
Yeah. That's exactly why I chose it to end this season of The Bear. Chicago Fizz. Here we go. They're not as attractive after they've been sipped on. But the initial one it's photographic. Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers, Michael.
So this episode, one way we talked about the last one is that it was an episode of rupture. Just a lot of rupture between people. And we also talked about it being misattunements all over the place. This one seems a little different in that, not a little, a lot different. And that it's about repair and healing, which is a nice close.
Yeah.
And I would hope we all eventually get to experience this. In
our lives.
Yeah, exactly. In our lives of just the repair and healing that can come. And one thing I tell my clients all the time is the good news is it's never too late for repair.
Healing is never too late.
Yeah.
I've had patients in their 70s start work.
Yeah.
It's never too late.
So this is kind of indicative of this morning. Yep, that's all I got.
Okay,
Are we done?
All right, so this
help me out.
Episode has a title, as all episodes do.
I don't even know what the title is. We didn't talk about that.
That's right. I wrote it on the board and then you didn't write it in a note. It's fine. Braciole? Is that how you say it?
I don't know.
It's an Italian. Yeah, there it is.
Oh.
So it's the dish. The title of the episode is the dish that Carmi is talking about that his brother Michael would make every Sunday. Braciole.
How do you say the bitter name that we never got?
Angostura.
Angustra. I don't know. I'll never know.
I'll never know. I never knew it. I never knew it.
I never knew it. I never knew it.
Never knew it.
Okay. So the title. Go back.
The title of this episode is Braciole.
Or Braciole.
Or Braciole.
In English.
Braciole. Yeah, so Braciole is It's sort of labor intensive, kind of like your drink that you chose.
So we're going to talk about what you're talking about right now?
Oh, I do know what I talked about.
Okay.
It's a kind of dish that you would make on a Sunday because you are cooking all day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty, it's fancy because it's a rolled meat, that's a piece of meat that's flattened, pounded thin, and then stuffed with prosciutto, breadcrumbs, cheese, and usually braised into tomato sauce. I don't know why that's funny. Braciole.
Okay.
We get the giggles. Oh my God. What is happening? We are falling apart.
It's a dish you would make.
Yeah.
On
Sunday
Sundays.
dinner.
Yeah. Okay.
Often with family, right? You're going to get together with your family every Sunday. Kind of Italian tradition.
But this is the one they were making in the recap from last time, where Sugar wanted to put the raisins in it.
Yes.
And the family was like, no. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
And Michael was supposed to be making it, but Carmi kind of swoops in and gets it actually done and does it probably beautifully done because Michael's so busy
telling the story,
chatting it up, taking center stage, which is also sort of annoying.
Michaels are just the worst.
They are. Jeez. Did you ever go by Mikey?
No.
Yeah.
No. Hated that name.
Because somebody called you that once?
It's because of the Life cereal commercial. Give it to Mikey, he'll eat anything. So my weight issues definitely got activated.
Vortex there.
Like, no, I don't like that. So the only person who calls me Mikey is my father-in-law.
Oh, interesting.
For some reason, I've allowed it.
The cost of admission. So yeah, it's the only for a show that's named after, or that's around restaurants and food. It's the only episode that's named after food.
Oh yeah. So far,
so far, right? And we're ending a season with a meal that you usually make at the end of the week or the beginning of the week, depending on how you want to see Sunday, and a gathering. And I think meals like this are such an opportunity for storytelling, for connection, for deepening our attachments, strengthening them. And that's sort of what's going to happen in this episode with all of the repairs. And so I think the episode is aptly named, or the writers are doing a beautiful job of using these metaphors, using these literal meals, which I just find lovely.
Yeah.
With the C and the I. Braciole.
Yep. That is how the Italians would say it. I'm just in a sassy mood right now. So,
sassafras.
This episode opens with a dream. We're back at
dreams, and particularly Carmi's dreams. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a powerful one.
Ugh. Why powerful?
Powerful, maybe painful, but also just so revealing. I think what I was telling you is that when I saw the dream, to me, it painted just the perfect picture of an avoidant, dismissive brain, like of how it works, of seeing all the pain and the internalization, and then the ultimate breakdown of like, I can't do this. And so you're seeing this spinning out inside that we may not see, likely not going to see on the outside.
Yeah.
But internally, I think that's a great representation of what's going on inside the mind of a dismissive avoidant. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of chaos, fear, and just not being enough. Like, I'm not going to be enough. The big risk here is I'm just going to mess it all up.
Yeah, you've shared the language. You've given me the language of the dismissive folks tend to be anchored around the fear of whether or not they are enough, as opposed to anxious, entangled folks tormented by the question of, am I too much?
Too much, yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose as we hear in Carmi's conversation, dialogue, monologue at the Al-Anon meeting, there is that sense that Carmi had to really prove himself. He really had to show himself sort of in this kind of independent way, even though there were ways in which he's reflecting on how Mikey would help him. But at some point he launches into this, I've got to prove it. I got to show it in a way that isn't drawing upon it, isn't collaboratively.
Yeah, no, it becomes very independent.
Yeah.
So independent.
Very congruent with that dismissive attachment. So there's that natural, once you said it, now I see it very clearly, the tormented question of, am I enough? Anchored in the kind of solitude, solitary individual, isolated on an island by yourself kind of question, rather than are we enough, or
can we do this together? Can we?
When I say am I enough as part of a group, but for Carmi, it very much feels like that congruent, consistent individual on an island. Am I enough to do everything?
And a constant way in which he's attempting to earn love, earn approval, earn
connection,
earn security, and attempt in a way. But yeah, and the dream, it also opens with him having this really kind of dark sarcasm. And I'm interested to hear what you think about that. Do you think it's the only way in which, even in his dream, he can conceptualize his brother's death, where he just talks about it so brashly, so sarcastically, not with really any reverence or empathetic connection to, this must have been really scary for him. Yeah, any of that.
Well, in the Freudian tradition, or the analytic tradition, we tend to see dreams as the unconscious trying to test the waters of the mind. Are you ready to look at this, deal with this, face this? And in that dream, he is full of an abiding, sarcastic, insensitive kind of sarcasm about his brother's death. But particularly in the context of a cooking show and a live audience. And I wonder if it's Carmi trying to get in touch with his anger, which is always going to be connected to a sadness, a lament, and a tenderness. But he's very disconnected from those kinds of feelings. And I would understand if Carmi is quite angry that his brother has ended his life.
And not say goodbye.
In any other sort of meaningful way, or...
Never got his approval that he always wanted. That you're good at what you do.
Yeah, or never felt it. Yep. It was never communicated and received and perceived. He may have always had it from Mikey's subjectivity, but Carmi never experienced it in his own mind.
And we often talk about like attachment being the child focus. I think this does a great job of showing how in the adult relationship, like Carmi has gone off and worked in the best restaurants in the world.
And it has been the best restaurant.
Right. And is still has this attachment wounding that's playing out, that's driving, that's directing how he engages with the world around him and his attempt to re-engage with his family. So it's not this thing that's just left back in our childhood.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we gotta go back and repair that thing. It's like, no, it keeps happening. We keep recreating it over and over and over again in our desperate attempt to try to reconnect.
Yeah, it becomes a template for conflict resolution. It becomes a template for problem solving. It becomes a template for how you perceive what's happening, and becomes a motivation.
Yeah.
He's not motivated to repair things with his brother, and you're hurting me, I love you, you love me, what's going on? He tries to repair that hurt and that rupture by being aggressive, trying to be the best, independent. He moves away physically, mentally, spiritually, relationally, emotionally, and loses track of time.
And then he also recreates it in other relationships. He talks about in his monologue there of if a stodge would come in, he would just double down, like, I'm going to beat them.
Yep, smoke them.
This is a competition.
Yeah.
And this idea of like, I can only have value if I'm more than enough. Not even enough, but I have to be the best.
Achieving. Yep. And that focus on the I rather than we. There's not a sense of I can teach this new person. I can learn from them. Speaking of the monologue.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, it's in the context of an Al-Anon meeting.
Yeah.
And which is when I've been to Al-Anon, it can be awkward. And that invitation of like anyone who's been here for less than, I can't remember what they said.
15 sessions.
15,
at that one.
Yeah. Would you like to speak? And I'm like, no, not at all. And so it's surprising actually that Carmi does. That's not a withdrawal move.
Sure.
So something is at play. Something is working. Something is bubbling up. He's coming to terms with. He's being reflective.
Yeah, he seems to be hitting his own end of the rope, rock bottom. He's tired. He's becoming aware of the old ways.
I think the fight with Sid and his just all out losing it
In particular.
really was a part of his rock bottom.
Yeah. And the way he treated Marcus as well.
He's feeling very confronted by that.
Yeah. Rightfully so. And perhaps beautifully so.
Yeah.
If it produces this sort of insight. As with so many healing endeavors, experiences, it's going to involve some storytelling and some reflection on themselves and their mind and other people's minds and reflecting on motivations. And Carmi, I think, has this beautiful insight that he's been trying to repair or fix, like so many enabling dynamics. He's trying to fix something in his brother specifically, and maybe more generally in the whole family, and thus, of course, in him. And it's going disastrously.
Not great.
No, it's not going great. In part, and maybe primarily because he keeps not attending to himself. He keeps denying the self's needs, pushing them off, pushing them away, taking them offline, as we dismissive attached folks do so well. And he tries to take care of everyone else.
I think that's shown so brilliantly when you see what he eats.
Yeah. PB&J's, Cokes.
And he's a Michelin star chef, and he has access to all the good stuff. But
Although no knock on a PB&J. I've been eating it lately this week, and it's been delish to rediscover the joy of a PB&J.
But yeah, anything else about the Al-Anon scene, the monologue?
Well, I think if we want to talk about storytelling in that context,
Yeah.
we really understand therapy as an endeavor of storytelling.
Yeah, that's what sorry, people don't know that I'm thinking through what we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, this is, here we are. Yeah. The idea of storytelling, that therapy is much like the revealing of story.
Yeah.
And when people come in the office, Johnson, one way she would talk about working with clients is every session she wants to learn. She wants them to teach them about them. So she wants to go and learn who they are and learn their stories, understand them with a different depth. And so treating each client as very unique and as an individual. Sure, with this attachment lens, we have an understanding of some theory and some normalcies. I don't like that word, but
Or a way of classifying.
Yes.
Organizing.
Right. At the same time, every person is unique. And so much like watching this show, as stuff keeps getting revealed, we're learning about each character, how they see themselves, how they see the other people in their world. And that's what attachment's all about, is this understanding of who I am and who you are and how we engage with one another.
Yeah.
And so with this, the stories being told in this episode that keep unveiling seem to be really starting to take a turn into a reflective nature, which is always, to me, a really interesting part of therapy. So people come in at the beginning are just like, not just like, but can be blaming, disconnected, telling the story from a different lens and not really embodying it. And then as we do the work and as we get to know, we learn more, there is an embodiment. There's a reflection, a self-reflection, a curiosity that starts to come up. And I think that's what you were saying, is that we see in this episode is a lot of great reflection of each individual's internal world. And it's an honest reflection. Yeah.
I forget where this quote comes from, but I think it's Richard Rohr's breathing underwater, which is
Richard Rohr is the Enneagram.
Yeah,
it's one of his things.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Before that, he was heavily involved in initiation rites for men.
Okay. I don't know what that is.
We often have them for women in the form of a quinceañera or a sweet 16.
Oh, okay.
In Jewish tradition of the bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
And so he used to do a lot of work there.
I was like, if anyone needs support, it's men.
Well, and we've lost our initiation rites. Right. And so they're falling into such disarray and disorder because they're going to find them somehow. But it's not through your first sexual experience. It's not through some sort of hazing. And so he did work there. He's I don't know, Franciscan, doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But some sort of Catholic priest, and has the organization of contemplation and action. So anyways, he wrote a book about the 12 steps, the spirituality of the 12 steps. And I think it's from this, maybe the 7th step. I don't know. That's what's coming to mind. That without a story, there's no self. That stories are the ways in which we discover a self, develop a self, create a self, maintain a self, heal a self, and connect from one self to another self. And whether it's an AA meeting or an Al-Anon meeting where just about every meeting is filled with people telling stories, or it's on millions of couches across this country and the world, I suppose, in therapy, people telling their stories. I find it's so exciting when a patient begins to develop the skill or start to exercise the skill of reflecting on their own story as they're telling a story, as they reflect on their mind as they're talking with you, moving sometimes from talking at you or telling a story in the same way that they've always told it. So it's not new, it's not fresh, it's not dynamic.
I love the way you're saying you're like boring.
Well, I mean, you can tell it is boring because you don't actually need to be a self there. You could be a wall and they would be telling the story in the same way. And it's not a true kind of secure kind of connection.
Right.
Yeah. I've told my patients many times, you're boring me, tongue in cheek, but serious. When their mind is becoming real flat and unreflective. Yeah. And it seems like if I'm going to have a dinner eating or even just making the Braciole, there's storytelling, just like in the previous episode. They're making this dinner and telling stories. It's a terrible story. It's an unhealing kind of story in so much as they were at a bar at 4 a.m. or 6 a.m. Yeah. It's laced with drug abuse and impulsive behavior and yada, yada, yada. But the beautiful storytelling and reflections that then happen in several different dyads.
Yeah, so let's just jump into that.
Yeah.
The different dyads, where the first one that comes up that's revealed is Sydney and Marcus.
Yes.
And they're having their, I don't know, like they're not commiserating, somehow connected and are having, I would say, an intimate dinner that Sid's cooking at her house. Yeah.
A little flirtatious, maybe. Some teasing.
No, I think it definitely starts that of like, are they going to date? Do we want them to date? Yes, we do. I do.
A lot of people want Carmi and Sydney to date.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I've seen that on the Reddit.
On the Reddit. Therefore, we know it's true. Yes. Yeah. Sorry, man. This morning, it's happening.
We were having a lovely conversation with Sydney and Marcus, and they are commiserating. They're validating, I suppose. They're sharing a shared experience and seeing each other. I think it's one of the things Marcus kept saying, I see you. And they're having a fun banter. But they launch into storytelling about how and why they're doing what they're doing and connecting why they may go back to the restaurant. It's because I fell in love with something, or something was so precious to me in my childhood, or this has meaning, and the sharing of each other's minds.
Yeah. In a very equal way.
Yeah, sure. Although Sydney felt bad for the way in which she hadn't been asking Marcus much about his life.
It's true.
But it does go back a bit to Sydney again. But it's felt very mutual and very generous.
Well, and we've held Marcus as more in the secure camp of attachment, and Sid within the dismissive avoidant. How do you see that in this
I saw
dynamic?
it in the slight nod of Marcus saying, they're asking, are you going to go back? Have you talked to Carmi since? And no one's talked to him. And Marcus thinks that he'll probably go back, and he'll probably go and speak to Carmi and hash it out.
Like it will be or it won't be. It is what it, not a dismissive is, it is what it is, but an acceptance of.
Yeah, that this happens, and we probably both have some thoughts and feelings around it. Probably need to say some things to each other about it. And he also is not naive, which is, then he also says, or maybe we won't, right? Like in part because maybe Carmi won't be able to, is how I project into that.
Yeah.
But we don't really see many people planning to talk to somebody to hash something out. It happens often in the back dock. We've gotten glimpses of that between various characters, but I saw that as an example of Marcus isn't making anybody out to be all good or all bad. Marcus knows and can acknowledge something's happened. He can acknowledge that he, in the essence, has a need to hash something out, and that's how you resolve in a collaborative social world. Whereas Sydney seemed much more avoidant about it. Yes, I'll probably go back, but I'm going to go back because I'm crazy. That's right. Yeah, there was no sense that she has some things to talk about. And when she does go back, we get a glimpse of that she reunites, but there isn't a hashing out of a conversation. She's just back in the mix. Strangely, we didn't see Marcus return either at the end of the episode.
Yeah, we did.
Did we?
Yeah, there's a whole scene
of him returning? Oh, I've totally blanked on that.
Yeah. No, he returns and Carmi comes up and they make eye contact, and Carmi kind of stalls out and walks away, and then he comes back and is like, I'm sorry, chef.
That's right. That's right. Oh, I totally forgot.
It was a really good healing moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whatever.
What I also found interesting is Marcus seems to have an understanding of how to connect with Sydney, and that there is a playfulness that's required to get to a certain depth with her. And then at one point he stopped the playfulness, and he was very direct, and he said, this is really good.
Yeah.
And gave this very heartfelt compliment. And then quickly she and he take them out of that close moment, but they sat in for just a second.
Yeah.
And there was a connection. And that's often the case of all these conversations don't have to be just so heavy and so just focused on the gooey, I don't know what you want to call that, but
sappy.
Yeah. But it's just a moment of authenticity that says, I see you. It's funny because he said that in a playful way, but I see you clearly and I value you. It was a really nice moment.
I don't know what your couple's work is like, or your therapy work. I've never sat in and watched it.
Yeah.
But knowing you personally and how often we get to play and are playing and laughing. And repair absolutely can involve that, and perhaps ought to.
Needs to.
Right?
Yeah.
And if attachment is this neurologically based system in relationships, a mind is a brain in relationship, and its point is to enable exploration. Well, one of those explorations is play, and that's how children learn about the world and master the world, is through playing. And it seems like it really actually is no different for us in adulthood, that we repair with play.
Yeah.
And we exercise new capacities, often through play or imagination, that's what's happening in the therapeutic moment, even in individual therapy. We are trying on new conversations, trying on new ideas, trying on new skills of sitting with a feeling or a sensation. Or
yeah, what comes to mind though is that there is a time for play, because there can be a misattunement with play.
Sure.
Right. So where one
can
is
be a misattunement with seriousness.
exactly.
Right? Like it cuts all these different ways. I was teasing you and playing, and you took it very pointed and very seriously. Or go ahead, you're going to say something.
No, the example you just gave, like I was teasing and playing, yet very serious and didn't know how to say it. So I did it that way. But yeah, the misattunement can be really easy to do. We do it all the time. But in this, again, with between Sydney and Marcus, it was really beautiful. Just the precision of, oh, this is a moment that I can be tender. And authentic and honest, and it was received, landed really well. And they didn't have a big rupture between the two of them, but it was still a repair that's, I think, going to keep that relationship safe, connected.
Well, whenever you have a kind of painful, I'm not sure how else to describe it, but some sort of conflict that is toxic or harmful, like what happened at the end of the previous episode, there is a kind of, I need to repair within and for myself, that they are both participating in helping repair each other, not between them, but repairing something from within them. When you're harmed in these kinds of ways, you disconnect from yourself. And so they are helping each other repair the disconnection perhaps within themselves.
It's something you might see siblings do.
Yeah.
After a parent has passed.
In particular. Sure. Or after parents have sort of
done something.
To one or both of the siblings, or to each other as parents. In celebration of siblings. Shout out to all the only child folk in the world.
Oh, you had to carry a lot. Let's go on to the next relationship.
Yeah, Tina and Carmi.
Yeah.
That was so precious.
It was. And Tina, I have a soft spot in my heart for her. She's trying so hard. Like, she's working some stuff out.
She is. Her growth arc is delicious.
It is delicious. She comes in and is playful. Just like, are you okay?
Yeah.
He's like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
He's obviously not okay. What do you mean? Well, you're just not as annoying as you usually are. So something's up.
Which is such a wonderfully playful way of getting at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
But they have a lovely connection on trying to understand Mikey. And what we had talked about previously was there's almost a parent-child dynamic that's going on between the two of them.
Yeah.
And it's a really good reflection of when Carmi is inviting her in because she exists in the system. Yet he's holding certain parts that just aren't appropriate for her to hold. Much like in a parent-child dynamic. We don't put everything. We don't give the child our whole mind. We give them just what they need. And that's it.
Yeah.
And that's reflected when they're talking about the money of like the amount of money that's owed or that was borrowed. And Carmi says it was a lot. We all know it's $300,000. It's been talked about.
Yeah.
But with her, he says, it's a lot. And it's a way that communicates that's not yours to hold.
Yeah.
And so she could stay in the conversation and be a part of the continued dialogue and reflection of what's going on. Is there anything else you would say to that?
No, not addition to it.
Okay.
I think we talked about this when we were talking about attunement, that the parent sort of sets aside a bit of what they're dealing with. So Carmi's obviously dealing with this massive amount of debt that is owed to Uncle. And he's trying to figure out where all this money had been going and what the money was spent on, and he's troubled by it. And Tina catches him, and he tries to not share all of that troubleness with her by only giving a certain amount, validating, I know you know that I'm sad, or I'm disturbed, or I'm upset. So a parent can validate the child when the child observes the parent being upset. But attunement is the parent or the boss or the professor or the teacher, or knowing what an employee or a child is and isn't responsible for, needs to know, doesn't need to know, is to carry, not to carry, and attuning to what that. That was a really interesting. I hadn't seen it that way, but once you said it, it was lovely.
I knew it.
I knew it. I thought this is I think a projection. I don't know how much it's there, but when Tina is reflecting and trying to make sure that Carmi knows just how much she really loved Mikey. Mm-hmm. I think it's Tina's way of also saying, I really love you.
Yes, absolutely.
And I know how much Mikey loved you. But not really knowing how to say all that and say it plainly and say it directly.
In an organized way.
In an organized, coherent, straightforward, understandable. It's not quite a complete sentiment. Mm-hmm. You know, I sense that she's saying that Mikey really loved me. I really loved Mikey. Mikey really loved you. I really love you. That would be a more complete. And instead she gets real concise with just, I really loved Mikey. Mm-hmm. And with the earning of security of attachment, as we heal from our insecure classifications and are moving towards security, we become more skilled. Mm-hmm. We become more comfortable with intimacy. We become better capable of articulating and expressing what we're really feeling and thinking.
Which she had a great moment of that, because in a disorganized way, it would have been really easy to dismiss and get annoyed and frustrated when they were talking about how Mikey wasn't paying a vendor for napkins.
Yeah.
And she says, you got to pay him. Like, we need napkins. And Carmi was like, that seems like that must have been his MO. And she's like, no, I remember it because it wasn't his MO.
Yeah.
But that would have been a really easy spot for her to get frustrated, be annoyed, like you're not getting it.
Yeah.
You're not, no, it's not what I said.
Yep.
But it was more clear.
Yeah, coherent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, seeing her growth.
Absolutely. Love her growth arc.
Yeah.
Team Tina.
And then you have Richie and Carmi. Man, what a night. A bachelor party night that went awry. And they're all disgusted by it. They're all really annoyed.
Oh, yeah.
That they're being asked to do this.
And probably annoyed because these aren't their people. These aren't their customers. These aren't it's not really their family.
Yeah. I never really get a sense of like who they are, like why Uncle would have these friends either.
Yeah.
Who we're trying to impress.
I imagine they were just friends of friends.
Yeah.
Doing favors so that he can get this or that.
Because that's where you want to have your bachelor party. Is it
I got the beef.
Beef?
Uh-huh. I know, exactly. This hole in the wall.
Yeah. That was odd. But yes, Richie ends up living in his chaos that he lives in.
Yeah, getting entangled in everyone else's chaos.
So he's going in, trying to help, trying to make things right. And we've seen him do it throughout the entire season.
Yeah.
Where he's like, oh, this is mine to fix.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it just doesn't go well.
Yeah, and fixes things by often turning up the volume. Mm-hmm. He tries to fix things by increasing the heat.
Yes.
As opposed to some other characters that try and fix things by turning down the heat, turning down the volume. Yeah. Richie, in his way, brings more fire to the fire.
Yeah. And by doing so, he hits a rock bottom. Like there's an accident that he has literally lost control over.
Yeah.
He doesn't control whether the person wakes up or not and whether he's going to be charged with manslaughter or not. Can you imagine how terrifying that would be?
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah. And so we said Richie and Carmi, but we're going to focus on Richie just for a second here. Mm-hmm. But in his rock bottom there, he gets his one phone call, right?
Yeah, and we were talking about also a series of rock bottoms he seems to be confronting, the realizing that his name in his ex-wife's phone and therefore his daughter knows him as Bad News Bear, and the realizing that he's really perpetuating a problem with the mafia folk hanging around in the way that Sydney and others more effectively handled that. So he finally...
That ecosystem he was trying to...
Yeah, it's
fragile
a sensitive,
ecosystem.
fragile ecosystem. And yeah, he's realizing he's the fragile ecosystem. And so here's another example when he finds himself in jail and facing serious possible charges. Yeah.
And so he calls...
Of all people.
Well, and I think it speaks to he doesn't have anyone.
Well, that's may or may not be true. He has an uncle he could call. He could call Carmi. He could call Marcus. He could call Ibrahim.
Sure, but the internalized
sure.
safety that he can go to.
Yeah, the
I guess that's external, but
inside the mind, it's not surprising that he would not maybe call some folks who might be able to help him in a different way, and instead he calls his ex-wife. Yeah.
And I don't know what switched for him. I don't know if he was originally going to call to say, hey, I need help. But as soon as he heard the voicemail, something seemed to switch. And he became very reflective and not focused on demanding for help or you've got to get me out or anything like that. It was an apology.
An amend.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And an attempt at repair. Taking responsibility, seeing how he's perceived or experienced by others, and reflecting on that.
Yeah, and imagining that you're calling and just being confronted of, damn it, this is a bad news bear moment. Like, it's right. Dang it, it's happening.
Yes.
I'm doing it again.
Yes.
It's happening again.
And beautifully, he doesn't defend against it. He just leans into it. And so he's repairing there a bit. There's a dyad of repair, even if she's not really alive on the other end of the phone.
Yeah.
But then he does it again with Carmi.
Because part of the repair, I want to stay there for a second. Part of that repair, again, is the organization understanding of yourself. And so when we come to an understanding and a true representation of ourselves, we have so much more freedom to navigate the world.
Yeah, capacity. Freedom.
Yeah.
It is the skill needed.
And so even though she's not there to say, yes, I forgive you. Yes, I hear you. It's just as much for her as it is for him.
Yeah.
To come to grips with. So I think it's a really...
Yeah. And I can imagine it was primarily for him and not for her. Much like we do in storytelling at an AA meeting. We are often reflecting on our lives and how we've impacted others, but it is for the self and the beloved community of others staying sober and moving into recovery. And it's the repair that then happens unto oneself, not just between people.
Yeah.
You know? And so then Carmi and cousin try to do that with each other. Yeah.
Well, and so Carmi bails him out, comes and reveals, hey, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
I am accessible. I'm available. You matter.
Yeah, you belong.
Even though you're not family.
Yeah.
Or Italian, you belong.
Yeah.
And Richie has capacity at that moment to, like, it's not a happy moment. Again, attachment isn't always
repair.
Yeah, just sunshine and rainbows. It can be really sad, but again, authentic and congruent and true, honest. And he just comes to a point where he recognizes, you're really all I got. And it's a really vulnerable moment to share that, because I think Richie feels there's a weakness to that.
Sure. I would say they probably both, on some level, make synonymous tenderness and vulnerability with weakness, even though it's one of the most courageous and shows of strength.
Building, yeah. And then you see Carmi, who's, they're all doing their work, and he can't quite tolerate it yet. He doesn't know what to do with it.
Yep.
I think he's struggling so much still with being enough himself that he doesn't have the capacity to entertain or
worried that if Richie needs him in that kind of way, there's not going to be any room for himself in that long tradition of when others need you, then there's no room for the self.
Well, and his direct quote at the beginning was, the more I removed others from my life, the quieter things became. Is that right?
Uh-huh.
Am I getting it right?
Mm-hmm. Carmi's monologue at the Al-Anon meeting. Mm-hmm.
So just turning the volume down as much as possible.
Yes.
And being needed.
And it's not also, though, it's not what caused Mikey's death, but that's what continues. That's the next sentiment in that part of that monologue is. And then I lost track of time, and then he died. Right. And that kind of trying to get the world quieter is a death. That living things aren't quiet all the time. Certainly robust space for quietude and security of attachment. But life is dangerous. Life is full of risk and threat, and living things are always navigating the threat. And that tends to not be necessarily all that quiet. And yeah, Carmi's attempt to silence it as a survival strategy ultimately was killing him.
Yeah.
Inside, stomach, soul, spirit. Yeah, so he can't quite join Richie in the sentiment. He can't mirror it back. He just sort of sits there quietly, sort of awkwardly.
Not rejecting it.
No.
So that was good.
Yeah, no sense that Richie took that as a rejection.
Yeah. He didn't dismiss it.
No.
Yeah, didn't try to discredit him. Of like, no, you've got other people. No.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
He just let it be. Which then leads us into the last, not necessarily dyad, but the last scene of where they're discovering what Mikey's been up to all this time. As well, that's not true. There's a really tender moment of he finally got the letter. He finally got the goodbye from Mikey.
Yeah, that Richie didn't withhold or keep.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a really tender, authentic moment. And Carmi finally got the one thing he's been desperately working for this whole time was, am I enough? And then ultimately, am I loved? And what I hear, I can just see some of my clients right now in my mind. They're like, Michael, I don't want that shit. Like, no, that's not that important to me. And I don't know if there's anyone who convinced me otherwise. That's simply not true.
Yeah.
You can't, it doesn't have a place to land yet because you don't know how to work with it. You don't know how to accept it. You don't know how to let it be a part of you. But I think we're ultimately that's what we're in desperate need of, is to know that we are loved.
Yeah. And what comes to mind also, though, is the same sentiment that love also doesn't always look and feel so rainbows and mushy, and sometimes that love is a very rough, loud, or comes with some aggression.
Yeah, help me out with that. Might that look like?
Well, what was coming to mind was Sydney's response to Tina. In a, like, I care about you, I care about myself, I care about this job kind of way that came out very appropriately aggressive, appropriately full of anger, but didn't dehumanize anyone.
The one that was just like, because I don't have time to fuck around.
Yeah.
Why'd you do that? Yeah.
That registered in Tina as love, connection, safety. Like, I'm going to keep you safe, but safe, what didn't necessarily mean a soft, warm hug.
Not giving flowers.
Yeah.
And
And so that is contained for me in my mind in terms of what we're all searching for, is to be loved, and to love.
Yeah.
Is.
Well, and even in this note, it wasn't a gushy note.
Yeah, sure.
Like it was a freaking recipe that Carmi resents. And just those 3 words, I love you. Maybe I love you, man. I can't remember. And followed with let it rip.
Yeah.
So it was still like, it wasn't this just overture, but it was enough to say, I see you. You matter.
Yeah.
You've always mattered in my mind. Like there's so much in that little bitty note.
Yeah.
That this whole time you've been working so hard.
Yeah. And the therapist in me would argue it should have been better. It should have been bigger. It should have been more detailed. It's still too concise.
Sure.
Yet it's good enough for that moment. Carmi definitely has a lot more work to do psychologically. That little bit of repair is not sufficient to really repair that for within Carmi. But
yeah, I mean, that wound is huge. He's dedicated his life to.
Yeah, that's right. And it's much bigger than between he and Mikey. It's
right.
It's the whole family system.
Which again, we still don't know much about the father. Like that stood out to me in this episode, in that a lot of the repair and rupture seemed to have been focused on between Carmi and Mikey. That what's driven him to be who he is today.
Yeah, we don't really have much of a sense of either of the parents.
It's true.
Yeah,
yeah,
but still.
But
we do in the form
cliffhanger.
What? In the form of, like we sometimes there's a mantra. Attachment is something that you do. You show it,
right?
In the way that you behave, and behaving includes talking. Behaving includes
responding.
Yeah, responding. And so we can deduce a lot about the parents by the way in which Mikey, Carmi, and Sugar are, and how they relate to others. We do have a sense of them.
Yeah,
it's just not explicit, right? It's just not.
We haven't been told the exact story yet.
Yeah, yep. We just have it all in symbolic form or incarnated in the lives of these three kids.
So question, after you watch this episode, is there a part of you that wanted to go to your pantry and see if there's any cash inside some tomato sauce cans?
No, but boy, it does scratch the itch of the fantasy of winning the lottery.
The lottery, yeah.
A savior, or all of the problems going away, which of course is never the case, never true.
Right. It was interesting to see everyone's response. Like it's such a happy, blissful moment. Everyone's working together. It didn't appear that anyone was putting anything in their pocket.
Yeah. Yep.
So tempting.
Yep. Nor did it feel like they were feeling jealous or suspicious of what Carmi might do with this money, or.
Yeah. This is an interesting scene.
Yeah, and the episode ends in a Braciole meal-ish, right? Like they're all sitting together eating an Italian pasta base meal and delighting in each other.
Yes.
It may be a little, assisted by the discovery of this money.
Right. A sense of relief.
But they're finally, or maybe they're returning to that family dinner. They're returning to sharing a meal. Seems like when you share a meal, you have to recognize our mutual humanity. It's literally feeding the body, feeds the soul. And yeah, they're all just delighting in each other. And I thought it was interesting who was at the dinner table.
I don't remember.
Marcus's roommate was there.
I still don't understand
He's
that.
Such a weird character. He is awkward as a character, but his presence there, I just thought was a very interesting.
He just keeps showing up.
Yeah, sure, invited or otherwise.
Right, exactly. Yet Fack has to invite himself, and may or may not get the actual approval. Was Fack there?
Yeah, Fack was there.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Sugar showed up.
Oh, that's right.
Don't have a sense of how or why she was there, because she hadn't been there before in the scenes. But I thought it was very symbolic of repair, of everything's and everyone is welcome. It's a reconciling. Yeah, I thought it was beautiful and interesting and symbolic.
Yeah,
and it's some of my favorite memories of life, is having meals with family and friends and 1,000 Friendsgivings.
Yeah. So I think that puts a wrap on our season 1 episode of The Bear Through an Attachment Lens.
That's a wrap.
Wow. Where are we going from here? Do you know?
Yeah, we haven't really talked about it. How we're going to do season 2 if
we're doing season 2, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because season 3 is right around the corner.
Mm-hmm. We've had some requests for Bridgerton, actually, which made me giggle. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be talking about where we go from here.
Did I tell you I'm watching Peaky Blinders?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
You're actually watching TV.
I know. I'm watching a show.
That's a big one. Doesn't it have like 6 seasons to it?
Yeah.
It's quite long. Yeah.
It is quite long.
All
We'll
right.
see if I finish it. Yeah. Well, there's the wrap. We did it. Thank you, Michael, for another delicious drink.
Yeah. Thank you. It's always fun.
Okay.
Bye.
We still don't have our sign off.
We don't. Maybe this is just it.
Yeah. Awkward sign off.
We don't have our sign off. That's our sign off.
Are you going to push stop? Is he going to? Bye.
And now.